The torch of freedom passed from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all. So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this great and wonderful country of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, wishing you a good evening on UCY.tv and welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we face, and that affects so many aspects of our lives. From our individual relationships, to our community relations, our family relations, our politics, our business affairs. Every aspect of our life is affected by the character issue, and we are coming to realize that more and more these days, it appears, as we have such huge character issues plaguing our politics, and most folks are realizing the importance of voting character. So we'll be talking a little bit about that tonight, but we're also going to be talking about whatever you want to talk about today. If you have a question you want to ask, if you have a situation you want to talk about, an example you want to share that you think will benefit the listening audience, give us a call at 501-258-8326. That's 501-258-8326, and I'll be happy to take your call. Well, we have lots to talk about today. There's lots been in the news, and there are a couple of interesting articles that I posted on my website and blog at drgeorgesimon.com and manipulative-people.com. Either URL will take you to the same place. That's a resource where you can find hundreds of timely articles on character-related issues, those kinds of folks that drive you crazy, manipulators, narcissists, sociopaths. They're all talked about, how to deal with such folks, how to get the right kind of help, all kinds of useful information. And then, of course, my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, In Sheep's Clothing, the international bestseller, and the definitive guide to understanding and dealing with manipulative types. And then my book, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, the book that it takes an in-depth look at all the disturbed character types you're likely to encounter in your life and how to deal with them, what makes them tick, how to understand them, and especially what to look for in the way of proper help when you're trying to navigate your way out of a bad situation. And then my book for the Christian faith community, The Judas Syndrome, about how genuine faith can really help a person turn a life around. And then my book with Dr. Kathy Armistead, the Toxic Relationship Survivor's Guide to Surviving and Thriving in this character disordered world of ours. My book with Dr. Armistead, How Did We End Up Here? The question many folks in bad relationships ask themselves, how did I get to this place? What can I do to avoid getting into a similar situation in the future? And also answers the question how we got here as a society. So here we are once again, another live broadcast. This is Sunday, October the 29th, 2017, and we are live tonight. So I can take your calls if you have a question to ask, or you just want to share something of interest. Give us a call at 501-258-8326. That's 501-258-8326, and I'll be happy to take your call. Well, once again, an interesting week, especially on the political side. Of course, there's week after week of this as the crazy kind of fighting that has plagued our system for so long continues. I want to talk just a little bit about that. I want to talk about human behavior in a way that people can understand, but it's not a way that has been talked about very often within mental health circles, within behavioral health science circles. I went to a workshop in Memphis, Tennessee. It was a wonderful workshop, actually. It was a workshop on how to be actively promoting of peace and harmony in our troubled social times. And it was a really pretty good workshop. But some things were said there that indicated to me how seriously narrow-minded we still are, how seriously uninformed most of us still are when it comes to some certain aspects of human behavior. And one of the things that really kind of got under my skin just a little bit, I didn't have a chance. I didn't have any chance really to impart any of the wisdom I've gained either through my clinical experience or my formal training or all the research that I've kept up with or the research that I've personally done. Didn't have a chance to do that during this workshop. But one of the things that came out of the workshop, one of the issues raised in it was this notion that people only exhibit aggressive or violent behavior when they're afraid of something. This has been a notion that has been with us for so long. And it seems intuitive because so many times we do react out of fear. But that is a really limiting view. And I'll explain more about that in just a minute. But the notion is that people would never hate, they would never be violent, they would never aggress in any way against their fellow man unless there was something about that fellow man that caused them some anxiety or fear. That we're always coming from a defensive place when we lash out. That's the notion that's been with us for a long time. And, you know, when I give these training workshops all over the country, and by the way, I'll be having more information on the website and blog about next year's workshops pretty soon, as I finalize the curriculum for next year's programs, and as we set some dates, you'll be hearing more from me about that, and I'll announce that on the program as well. But the thing that I talk about so often in my training is how short-sighted it is to think that all of our hostilities stem from a fearful or insecure place. There are so many ways to do violence, sometimes unintentionally. For example, someone strikes up a relationship with someone else who just happens to be in a marriage that's not doing so well. Well, not necessarily some fear there going on, maybe even tremendous attraction, tremendous desire. But damage is being done, perhaps toward another relationship, totally unwittingly. Another example. I give this example, I illustrate this point in my book, In Sheep's Clothing. Seduction being one of the primary manipulation tactics of disturbed characters. You know, when we seduce, believe it or not, the act of seduction is an aggressive act. It's a covertly aggressive act. The person seducing wants something, and they're not upfront about it. So, seduction is a covert way of getting the other person to like, trust, become involved with you, and they don't really necessarily have a good read yet on your character. Now, it's really strange for most people to see that as an aggressive move, but it is. It's a very, very subtle form of violence, as opposed to just loving, really loving, giving love, and then waiting to see if it is returned. You see the difference? We really have to change our way of thinking. So there's this other kind of aggression that we call instrumental aggression. And it's different from the classical kind of aggression that we call reactive aggression, which is most of the time rooted in fear. In other words, when we face a threatening situation and it triggers that fight or flight response, we have two options. Either we flee the danger or we stand our ground and go head to head with it and take our chances. And that kind of aggression, when we choose to fight because we think we have to, perhaps there's no running room, perhaps escape is not an option, perhaps we're in a situation where it would actually do us more harm than good even to try to run. Or perhaps it's just not even an option. That kind of fighting is rooted in fear. There's danger there. But there is another kind of aggression. It's called instrumental aggression for a reason. It's rooted strictly in desire. Notice I didn't say need, I said desire. We are a covetous people these days. A very covetous people. We want. And here is the problem with our character-disturbed times. When we go after what we want, with some inherent hostility, with a lack of regard for the impact on others, or even on the planet. That's an aggressive act, and it's not rooted in fear. It's rooted strictly in desire. For example, we want lots of nice clothes. They seem so plentiful. And we can go to these places where we can get really sharp designer stuff at bargain prices. We love being able to do that. And we want more, and we want more, and we want more, and we don't want to have to pay the price. And we are not aware. We're not mindful of the impact of that ravenous appetite for these things on the individuals who work in those sweatshops in places, sometimes where even child labor is used, or people are overworked for long hours and paid unfair wages. So people get hurt. There are so many ways to injure that are not fear-based, but rather desire-based. And so I wanted to make that point at this conference, and I wasn't able to do it. Because one of the things that we know has to happen in our society, if we're ever going to build the kind of just, peaceful society that we need to build, and I'm not just talking about here in our country, I'm talking about on the global stage. If there's ever really going to be any kind of peace and harmony, it will come only when we have such mindfulness and regard for one another that we set our ravenous appetites aside. It's not that so much that we fear each other, that we do that. There's no question of the fact that part of the reason that we store arms, that we amass these stockpiles of weapons, et cetera, is that we fear the possibility of some kind of attack. There's no question that that's a part of it. But the other part has to do with our appetite and the things that we want and the lengths we're willing to go to ensure that we have what we want. And that's been the more insidious factor. It happens in relationships too. And that kind of aggression gets very little attention. It gets very little attention, too, when couples go in for counseling, because most counselors are totally unaware of it. They're steeped in old models that have such tunnel vision, such limited view of problems. So no real work gets done, or no essential work gets done. Regard for human life, and therefore even the quality of human life, is pretty much at an all-time low. In our country, in the United States of America, we have the highest percentage of our population confined in some way, behind bars of some kind, locked up in some way, than any other free society on earth. And it's been that way for years, and the problem is getting worse. And here's the worst statistic on top of that. We can't build beds fast enough. There are all kinds of folks who by statute and by reason of the stuff that they've been doing easily could qualify to be behind those bars that aren't. It's a disgrace. We have such dysfunction. This past week, the president declared some kind of emergency, national emergency, some kind of crisis with the heroin epidemic, with the opioid epidemic. My goodness. And all kinds of reasons offered for it. You know, patients get hooked on prescription medications, and then one thing leads to another. But there are character issues all around this, from the irresponsible medical professionals who hand out these drugs like candy to our individual characteristics that have made us so intolerant to pain and discomfort that we want instant relief for everything. Now, I know this is going to sound like bragging, so I really hesitate to say this, but I'm going to anyway, because I'm trying to make a point. And so I'm sorry if I offend you and you think that it's just bragging, so be it. But I need to make a point here. I have had the misfortune to have been blessed with some genes that are not the ones I would have picked out for myself. I'm talking about DNA, you know, those kinds of genes, not the kind you wear on your hips. And for that reason, I've had to have several surgeries, a couple on my back. Anybody that's suffered with back pain or neck pain or any of those kinds of things knows how painful that can be. Well, first there's the medicines that you can take to relieve the pain associated with that. And they all carry risks. I did my best to bear the pain until I couldn't bear it anymore. That's when I had the surgery. Risky. And with not a lot of track record of success. I mean, not just risky from a medical standpoint with complications, but risky as far as outcome certainty. The certain kinds of surgeries I had. Now, these were not painless procedures. And of course, coming out of surgery, which, by the way, I was just absolutely so fortunate, so indeed fortunate, to have a remarkable artisan do these surgeries and give me a new lease on life. But you come out of surgery, and the first thing they want you to do is be medicated beyond belief. And right off the bat, because I know enough medicine to make me dangerous, you know. I'm a clinical psychologist, so I only have a close familiarity with some of the psychiatric medications, but I do know enough about this stuff to make me kind of dangerous, and so I was aware of what they were giving me and how it would likely affect me and what its addiction potential was and whatnot. And so I wouldn't take the full dose on purpose. And I went, this was systematic. I was trying to see how much discomfort I could bear. And it was surprising. I can remember when it wasn't standard operating procedure that you had Novocaine or any kind of anesthetic when you had your teeth drilled. There was a time, folks. I don't know how many of you remember such a time, but there was a time. And people didn't die. They were uncomfortable. They didn't particularly appreciate going to the dentist. But you bore the pain for the 20 or 30 minutes that it took to get the job done. And then you took some aspirin when you went home to reduce the inflammation and to deal with the aftermath pain. And in a couple of days, you were fine again. These days, we don't want people to suffer any discomfort that has a bad combination. Why should I suffer in any way? And it's been so destructive to our character, so destructive. I deal with young people all the time whose real problems in school are not the ADD that they're diagnosed with and they get attempted to be medicated for so that it will take all the problems away, but rather they haven't made peace. They haven't made inner peace with the notion that some things are just laborious, that some subjects just aren't all that interesting or stimulating, that some tasks just aren't all that much fun to carry out and to finish. And they haven't made peace with that because for them, life has to be a joyride. And for that reason, when things become hard or boring or understimulating, they want no part of it. And their life becomes a shipwreck as a result. Because they've never cultivated the will to bear any discomfort. So to get back to my example, not only did I not take the full dose, but once I realized that I could bear the discomfort, it was only aspirin or a little Aleve or something of that nature from then on, all through my recovery. Had a 3-week supply of hydrocodone prescribed, but I knew the risks, and I wasn't going down that route. And yes, I was going to be uncomfortable, but you know what? The fact is that the discomfort was no worse than the excruciating pain that I'd already been in before I had the surgery. Sometimes you bear with pain. Let's talk about in relationships. So many people exit relationships when things get tough because they just don't want to deal with the pain or the hardship. Now, granted, there is such a thing as continual, pointless pain caused by someone's behavior that will not modify because they will not take responsibility for it and modify it. And there's no reason why someone should keep themselves in unnecessary pain. That's true. But some pain is necessary and constructive. And when people are willing to bear that kind of pain in a relationship and work through it, there are enormous payoffs. But folks today are too quick to throw in the towel. And it's all a character issue. So when the president goes on and declares this war, all the time I'm thinking, where is the focus on the real issue? All the character issues involved, from the irresponsible physicians who hand out these gateway drugs like candy, to the poorly developed, immature characters who never want a moment's suffering, who are so adverse to it, and who are so spoiled as to think that life should be a cakewalk, that they're not willing to endure. They're always looking for that escape. I should be happy every minute. I should feel great every minute. There's no reason to bear anything, any burden, any discomfort. It's a huge, huge character issue. And so I talk about it all the time in my training workshops. Now, I know that some of you out there can identify with what I've been talking about. So if you've got a situation you want to share, question you want to ask, or maybe you have something else that you want to talk about and you think our audience would be interested in, then give us a call at 501-258-8326. That's 501-258-8326, and I'll be happy to take your call. We are live tonight. August, oh my goodness, October the 29th, 2017. We are live, so I can take calls tonight. Something else I wanted to talk about, too. I mentioned that I went to this workshop, and the workshop was really on active bridge building, active peacemaking. Proactive measures, peaceful, nonviolent measures to bring about justice. And we have a situation here in my home state in Arkansas. We tried to set a record a few months ago in executions. We were going to execute eight people in a very short period of time. That didn't quite happen, but we still executed a few. And we have another execution scheduled for just a week or so from now. And this will be occurring to a man who certainly committed, no doubt, a heinous crime. There's no question about the fact that he committed a heinous crime. But this man is delusional. And because he's delusional, he's not able to really understand what is going to happen to him and why the state wants to carry out the sentence that it wants to carry out. And the Supreme Court has ruled that unless somebody really can understand what's going to happen to them and why, we should not take their lives. But the way things are here in Arkansas, to affect the kind of evaluation that would have to take place to attest to this person's delusionality. The way things are built into our system, the procedures built into our system, there's not a clear pathway to forcing the issue of getting his condition to be officially recognized and therefore form a justification for commuting his sentence, or for clemency, or for postponing his sentence until his mental health can be restored, if it can be restored. This case is tragic for a lot of reasons. It's the case of Jack Green, and perhaps maybe some of you out there can read about it, and perhaps you can even comment about it if you get informed about it. But the case is so sad right from start to end. This is a person who clearly had severe mental health problems for a long time. Even showed up in the ER of a couple of hospitals sometimes, concerned about his mental health, asking for help, even going so far as to express his worries about the homicidal thoughts that he was having and the concern that he had that he might not be able to control his impulses. Imagine someone in the throes of mental illness who still has the presence of mind to run into an emergency room of a hospital and say, look, this is what's going on in my head. I need some help. And then they get no help. And then some months later, they actually do what they feared that they were going to do. And then we want to take their life as the solution. You know, our respect for human life couldn't possibly be lower. Our respect for the dignity, the value, the preciousness of human life couldn't possibly be lower. We've become a nation, we've become a society of pure hedonists. What matters to us is what satisfies us. What matters to us is what pleases us. We avoid at all cost what pains us, and we pursue with rabidly, rabidly, what pleases us. And the preciousness of life itself is lost. And it's causing us so much in the way of problems. Now, I know that some of you out there may equate what I'm saying with a strictly pro-life, anti-abortion stand. It's not. That's not it. That's not it. When I'm talking about respect for an acknowledgement of the value of and the dignity of human life, I'm talking about all aspects of it. How we treat one another, how we tend to one another's needs, how we do our best, how we actively do our best to find common ground and build bridges instead of walls. That's what I'm talking about. It's the ultimate character issue. It's the ultimate character issue. And it's one of the 10 commandments of character that I talk about in a book that is still not ready for release, I'm sorry to say. And I'm not sure, I'm not going to make any apologies for this. I'm not sure when it's going to be ready for release. I'm not going to even make any more projections because it'll be ready when it's ready. It's probably my last, if not second to last work, written work, and it needs to be what it needs to be before it gets out there. And I have a pretty full life with other issues to tend to, other things on my plate, and so it'll be ready when it's ready, and it's not ready yet. And I'm not going to put out something that isn't of the caliber of the books that I've put out so far. That's just the way it is. So it'll be a while yet. But respecting the value and preciousness of life, that's fundamental. is fundamental to everything. That has to come first. Even our founders knew this. When they declared that first among the inalienable rights, first among them is life. They declared life, liberty, and the pursuit, not the guarantee, but the pursuit of happiness as inalienable rights, which means that they're birthrights. They're conferred by the Creator. It is no person's prerogative to take them away. We can abridge those rights when people don't respect those rights enough to exercise the responsibility that comes along with any right. But we can never take them away. They are inalienable. And the first is life. And it's a reflection, not just on the national character, but it's a reflection on all of us. How valueless human life has become, and how valued our pleasures have become. We've become a society of spoiled, entitled brats in many ways. And it's showing up in everything, from our individual relationships to our intimate relationships in our marriages, when they even happen, to our family relations, to our politics, our business affairs. Everything is impacted by this. Regard for the preciousness and value of each human being and the dignity of each human being is at an all-time low, and we're paying the price for it. We're paying the price for it in so many ways. And when I was at this workshop, discussing with several other people this problem, the emphasis was not on some kind of intellectual exercise, mental masturbation, as it were, in trying to understand these concepts. The emphasis was, how do you put this level of conscientiousness about the value of human life and what we have to do to restore character, what we have to do to build bridges, what we have to do to restore some sense of decency, harmony, peace among us, heal the divisions, heal the wounds. It was all about what kind of activism we could take. And we're not talking about aggressive action. We're talking about assertive, nonviolent solutions to our problems. So I was kind of energized. Because I know that there are some like minds out there. We're growing. And we're truly coming to realize the nature of the problem that we face. You know, they say in the 12-step programs that that's the very first step. The first step is the admission of powerlessness over a problem, but you have to identify the problem first. And when you've got it correctly identified, when you've got it nailed, then begin at least to address it. But you can't begin to address it until you've nailed it down. What is it that we've become powerless over, and that we need a guiding hand to see us through, dealing with more effectively? The problem is it's historically been through the ages, and it's waxed and waned in intensity over the eons. The problem is it has always been character. We are not naturally civilized, decent human beings. We are animals. Socialization for us is a process. It has to start very early, and it takes hours and hours and hours, hour after hour, day after day, year after year, for many years of our life. And under some pretty decent circumstances, it takes all that to shape us into the kinds of decent human beings that can help make this all work. We're the only creatures on the planet that take that long to socialize. And the worst part of it is that we all come to the table with different strengths and weaknesses. So all of us are made up just a little bit differently. And that challenge of socialization is more difficult for some. And then there are all the environmental factors that contribute to it too. So if someone who is not optimally equipped comes into a really horrible environment, oh my gosh, what a task it is. What a task it is to equip them with the skills, with the mindset, with the values, with the core beliefs, with the behavioral habits that will allow them to function adaptively in life. The statistics are alarming. We've almost gotten used to the fact, we're almost resigned to the notion that more than half of our marriages will fail. We're almost resigned to that. We kind of expect it. We're almost resigned to the fact that maybe we'll get it right the second, third, fourth, or fifth time we try it. We're almost resigned to the idea that young folks just have to go through some things, and that maybe they'll kind of get a clue in their 30s, 40s, 50s, or even 60s what it's all about. We've become resigned to that fact. We've also become resigned to the idea, we've become overly accepting of the idea that if we're holding our own and we're doing pretty much okay, that we don't have any obligations anywhere else. And all we really need to do is protect ourselves against those who not only aren't doing so well, but might, because of their own character deficiencies, do us harm. Well, I got to tell you, folks, we are all in this together, whether we like it or not. We are all in this together. And we have to do something actively, proactively, about building one another up, helping each other learn, grow, prosper, relate better to one another. We have to do a better job of that, or we will not make it. There are some really seriously disturbed characters in positions of great power in various countries in this world right now. And it is like a powder keg getting ready to explode. And I am not exaggerating. Folks know that I'm not. And we have some unfortunate folks who don't have the character. They don't have the character to even know that they don't have the skills or the mindset necessary to defuse the situation. Egomaniacs, megalomaniacs. Folks so hell-bent on proving their superiority, their invincibility, so enamored of the power that they have, and so covetous of flexing muscle and displaying that power, that they will do great harm. And we allowed those, I'm talking about we as a society, we allowed those folks to rise to power. Power is granted by those subordinated. It's granted. It's relinquished. There are peaceful, nonviolent ways to resist that kind of usurping of power by disturbed characters. It's really a sad, sad time when you can count, maybe on the fingers of one hand, maybe two, the number of individuals that you can think of in either high public office or in positions of power and responsibility that you really think so highly of that you want to hold them up as role models, especially when it comes to issues of character. It's a sad statement, but it's the condition of our times. It's the condition of our times. So, I spend a lot of time talking about it. Every week here on the radio on UCY.tv at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, with you here for an hour. And then on my blog at manipulative-people.com or drgeorgesimon.com, either URL takes you to the same place with the hundreds of articles that I write, one each week, on all the topics you really need to educate yourself on if you're going to survive and thrive in this character-disturbed world of ours. And then, of course, writing about these things in my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, the book that the international bestseller that most people regard as the definitive book on the subject, and my book, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, my in-depth study and expose on all of the disturbed character types that you're likely to encounter in your life, from the narcissist to the narcissists or psychopaths or sociopaths to the covertly aggressive or manipulative personalities to the to you name it, to the dependent personalities, codependent personalities. All of these folks you'll find in there, and you'll also find helpful tips on not only understanding how they operate and how to best deal with them, but what to look for in the way of the kind of help that will really get you through the issues that you have to deal with every day when you're in a relationship or have to deal with one of these folks in some way. And then also my book, The Judas Syndrome, written specifically for the Catholic, not the Catholic faith community. I just happen to be Catholic, but for the Christian faith community. As a matter of fact, the book is not published by a Catholic publisher. It's published by a Methodist publisher. Abingdon Press is a division of the United Methodist Publishing Group. So it is for the Christian faith community, and it's really about how genuine faith, not faith just professed on the lips, but faith truly embraced and lived out, can really transform a person's life, can really save a person from their baser selves. And then lastly, my book, How Did We End Up Here? The Relationship Partners Survival Guide in this character disordered world of ours. How did we end up here? It'll let you know how you probably got in the situation you did, what might be something you need to look at versus what is strictly on the other person, how to then avoid getting yourself into a similar circumstance the next time. And it also addresses the question of how we got to where we are as a society. That's how did we end up here? The only book out right now co-authored with my friend Dr. Kathy Armistead. And then, of course, this radio program, Character Matters, every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. On UCY.TV, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And coming next year, some more workshops, training workshops through Vine Education, formerly Cross Country Education. These will be 2-day advanced training workshops, primarily aimed at mental health professionals, but anyone can attend. I'll have more information for you in not too much more time, and I'll have information posted on my blog site and website at manipulative-people.com and drgeorgesimon.com. These will be 2-day advanced training workshops in selected locations, large venue locations, large metropolitan areas throughout the country in 2018. So be looking for information on the blog, and I'll be making some announcements here on the program as well. Well, we didn't have any callers tonight, and we don't have time to take a call as we're coming to the end of the hour here. Please do yourself a favor and mosey on over to the blog where you can find so many resources and avail yourself of the books. And join us again next week for another edition of the program. We'll have more to talk about on character-related issues. We are likely not to have a live program the day after or the weekend following Thanksgiving Day. That Sunday following Thanksgiving, we're likely not to have a live program. I'll let you know more about that as we get closer. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate your patronage of my work and my books, and your loyalty to the program. And remember, if we're ever going to make this work, we have to make character count again. We have to make Character Matters, hence the title of this program. So tune in again next week for another edition of Character Matters. Thanks for tuning in tonight. I'm Dr. George Simon. I appreciate you, your loyalty, and I hope that we can visit again next week. Now, I'm not hearing our closing bumper